Yeah. Hi everyone. So in this video, we'll be going through an ATM transactions analysis for a fictitious bank named Wisabi Bank. And this analysis will cover a time period of 1 year from January till December 2022. So we'll be looking to build a dashboard that looks like this. So this is a dashboard. This is a home tab. You have the overview tab, and you also have the demographic reports tab. So just as um, is a standard approach to building data projects, we use the problem-solving framework to approach this project. So this consists of 6 stages, which is the business understanding, where you understand the business problem, data understanding, data preparation, analysis/modeling, validation, and visualization/presentation. So the first step is to understand the business problem. So for this, I'll navigate to the project folder, and you can access this folder right via the link in the description. So I'll come onto the project folder, and in the documents folder, you have a project brief document. So I'll open this up. And this is simply a brief from the bank, right? So for this project, you're acting as a data consultant for Wisabi Bank. And this contains an intro about the bank, what they do, and then the business problem you're trying to address, right? And then also it includes the scope of the project. You're analyzing ATM transaction data, and then the expected deliverables, reports and dashboards, and then the conclusion of the project. So this is self-explanatory. You can go through it in depth. So I'll go on to the next document that's important to us, which is the business requirement document. The project brief is sent to you from the bank, right? The next document, which is the BRD, or business requirement document, this usually prepared by a project manager, right? But then in most instances, as a data analyst, you might be required to build this yourself, mostly in small teams. So this contains an overview of the project, and then the stakeholders, bank management, ATM operations manager, branch managers, etc. And then the business objectives of the project, the scope of the project, the requirements, deliverables, assumptions, constraints, the project timeline, budget, etc. So you could have different variations, right? But this is also self-explanatory. You can go to it in detail if you want to. So this gives us an understanding of the business requirements, right? So I have an understanding of the business and what I'm trying to achieve for this project. The next step is to understand the data understanding. So for this, in the same documents folder, right, you have an Excel document, data dictionary. So I'll open this document up, and this simply explains the different tables and entities in for this project. So you have a transactions facts table, and this contains your facts, right? So you have ID down to the amount, and you have the description of each of these columns, right? So this contains dates, IDs for the um, cardholder or customer, location, type of transaction, right? The ID, and then the amount of that transaction. You also have a location dimension table. This contains info about locations, right? So this is also self-explanatory. You have customer dimension table, right? And you also have the different columns. These are different informations about the customer, their name, gender, age, occupation, etc. And is Wisabi simply shows you if is a Wisabi customer or not. Then you have the transaction type, right? So simply the type of transaction is here withdrawal, savings, inquiry, or transfer. Then you have the hour dimension table. This helps us just know the hour of the day a transaction occurred. And then you have a calendar, right? This is simply for dates, right? Anything that concerns dates, this will help you report that. So this is data dictionary and it's also self-explanatory. So for the actual data sets, right, you have your fact tables, which are all in this transactions folder. So this contains 5 different tables for the different states. So if you look at the project brief one more time, right, the bank is headquartered in Lagos and it has branches in Kano, Rivers, Enugu, and the FCT. So these are different fact tables for all those locations, the headquarters in Lagos, right? And then the other 4 states. Then you have the tables for location, calendar, customers, hour, and then transaction type. So at this stage, I'll go on to load this data into Power BI. So data preparation. So I'll come on to my Power BI file, blank Power BI file, and I'll come on to the top left where you have get data. So I'll choose get data, and I'll start with the um, fact tables, right? They're all in folders and they have the same structure. So I'll come on to the more option. And here I'll choose folder and hit connect. So I'll navigate to the folder where I have my files. So for me, there's a documents folder and the rebels folder. And I have that Power BI, Wisabi Bank data sets, and then transactions. So this transactions, right? This is the project folder, and this is the facts folder, transactions. So I'll choose this and hit OK. And click on OK also. So here I'll click on combine and then combine and transform data. Hit OK. It opens up Power Query. And when I click on the source name, load more, you should see the different files, right? It should be files that are being combined. Yeah, this checks out 5 files, Enugu FCT down to Rivers, cancel. So at this point, I'll just bring in other files. So I'll come on to the top left and choose new source. And I'll choose the other file as CSV file. So I'll choose text/CSV. So I select this and I'll start with the very first file, location lookup. So I open this up. Okay. The next file, top left, new source. text like CSV, calendar, open. Okay. New source, text like CSV, customers, lookup, open. Okay. And then new source, text like CSV, our lookup, open. Okay. And then the last file, new source, text like CSV, transaction type lookup, open. And okay. So here I'll simply rename these queries. Just click on this twice. And I'll call these location. Alternatively, you can also come on here, right click and choose rename. I'll call this calendar. I'll call this customers. I'll call these R. And I'll call this transaction type. So I'll come back to the transactions query and make a couple of changes. So the first thing I'll do is to remove this column, source.name. It's not useful to me, so I'll take it off. Source.name. And then, so I'll need to combine the transactions table with other tables. For the calendar table, I'll combine via the dates. And for the hour table, I'll combine via the hour key. So currently, when I look on this table, there's no column for dates or hour, though I can extract date from here and hour. So that will be some of the things I'll need to do. And then also I have the transaction start date time and transaction end date time. So for this transaction, it started on the 1st of January, 7:01 a.m. and ended 7:04 a.m. So it took about 3 minutes, right? So I want to extract the duration for each transaction. So that's me simply subtracting the start date time from the end date time in minutes. So I'll make a new column. I'll come onto the top here, right? And choose the add column option. So add column, and I'll choose custom column as well. I'll choose custom column. And this column, I'll call it duration. Duration. And this simply duration dot total minutes. Yeah, this duration dot total minutes. And I open a parenthesis. And I'll use the transaction end date time and subtract the start date time. So I'm simply saying, find the difference between the end date and start date time in minutes, right? So I hit OK, and you have that right, duration in minutes. So the next thing is to extract the hour. So I'll use the start date time for this. Click on the start date time, add column. I'll come to the date and time section, and I'll click on the drop down for time, and I'll choose hour. Click on hour. Yeah, cool. Then one next thing I'll do is I'll just change this to the dates. So I'll click on this. Instead of date and time, I'll choose dates. So I can combine this to the calendar table. And this should be whole numbers, duration. Click on this icon here, ABC123, and I'll make it a whole number, duration in minutes. So I don't need this transaction end date time. I can just remove it. It's not useful. So I take it off, remove it. And then I'll just move these columns. So I click on this, hold shift, click on this, duration hour. So I just click and drag. I'll just drag it. It's not compulsory, right? But I prefer to just have it here. So I just put it somewhere here. Yeah. So I think my transaction table looks good. Now I can combine this to the calendar table via the dates, right? So I'll just call this dates. So it's easy to recognize dates. I'll combine via the dates to the calendar table, and I'll combine via hour to the hours table. So the location table, ID, I think this looks clean. The types are correct, and this looks okay. Calendar, this looks clean also. Dates, whole number, text. Yeah, these look good. This is a number, this text, ABC, number 123, dates. Yeah, these all look good. So customers table, this look good also. These are all text. And then these are dates, birth dates. So I want to make a few changes, right? I have the birth date. I want to get the age and then use the age to create age groups. So add column, birth date, add column. I'll choose custom column and I'll call this age. And the formula for this is simply duration dot duration total days total days. And this transaction is from January till December 2022. So I'll just use the very first day of the next year, which is 2023, as my date. So 2023, comma, 1st of January minus the birth date. So I'm saying get the difference in days from the first day of 2023 minus the birth date. So this gives me the number of days from the birth date to 2023. And then since I want the age in years, I will divide the number of days by the number of days in a year, which is approximately 365.25. So this should give me the age, right, in years. So I hit OK. And I have decimals, right? Decimals, but I want whole numbers. So click on the age column. I'll come onto the transform tab, and I'll come on to the number column, numbers, right? So you have rounding. I'll click on the rounding option and I'll choose round up. So look, you have 20.8. I expect this to be rounded up to 21, right? So I click on this column age, rounding, and round up, and I'll have 21. This looks good. The next step is to create an age group column. So I'll come on to add column one more time. And this time I'll choose conditional column. So I choose this and I'll call this column age group. Age group. So I'll say if the age column is less than or equal to 15, then I should have 0 to 15 years. Then add another clause. If the age group is less than or equal to 25 years, I should have 16 to 25 years. Another clause. If the age column is less than or equal to 35 years, then give me 26 to 35. If the age column is less than or equal to 45 years, then give me 36 to 45. If the age column is less than or equal to 55 years, then 46 to 55. And if the age column is less than or equal to 65 years, then 56 to 65. And then if the age column is greater than 65 years, then give me more than 65. More than 65. So this should account for all the possible scenarios. But I'll just add else order, right? Just to check for any inconsistencies in my logic. But I expect all this to be accounted for. So I hit OK. And when I check the age group, right? So I come on here, click on the drop down, load more. So I can see that all the ages are being accounted for. Yeah, 0 to 15, more than 65. So I cancel. That makes sense. So this looks good. So I come to the next table, our table. This looks good. Transaction type. This looks good. So I'll just close this, right, and apply. So this will take a, a moment because you have over 2 million rows in the transactions table. It should be done in a bit. I think it's almost done. Yeah, awesome. So our tables are done loading. So I'll come on to the modeling view, model view. So I click on this. I'll just minimize this, and I'll just come to the bottom and fit this to the view. So Power BI has tried to detect the relationships. So in most instances, it will be accurate, right? But I prefer to just do it myself. So what I'll do is I'll come onto this view and click on the first table, hold shift, last table, and delete all the relationships. Delete. I'll just create them from scratch, just to be sure that they're accurate. So click on new relationship and transactions table. Link this to the calendar table via the dates. I hit OK. New relationship, transactions table, connect to the customers table via the cardholder ID. Hit OK. New relationship, transactions table, transactions fact table to the hour dimension table via the hour. Yeah, that looks correct. So I hit OK. New relationship, transactions fact table to the locations dimension table via the location ID here. That was correct. So I hit OK. And lastly, the transactions fact table linked to the transaction type dimension table via the type ID. Yeah, that was correct. So I hit OK. So I close this and I expect to have my tables now all connected. Yeah, cool. So this looks correct. And let me just zoom in. So best practice is to hide the the foreign key columns in your transactions table from the data from your report view. So I'll hide this cardholder ID. So this is taking time. But then the same thing, I'll do it for the card holder, the date, hour, location, and the transaction type ID. Just hide them from the view. It's not mandatory, right? But just best practice. So the next thing is to start building my reports, create measures and build my reports. So back to my project brief. The first question says, what is the average transaction amount by location and transaction type? So I need to make measures. So I need a measures table for this. So what I'll do is I'll come onto the modeling and I'll choose write a DAX expression to create a new table. So I'll choose this option here, modeling, and then this icon here, choose it. So I click on this. File is quite large, so it's just taking time to do um, this calculations. So I'll call this measures table. This simply, I'll open up curly brackets and type in the blank function and then open up parentheses, open and close parentheses. So curly brackets, blank, open and close. So I enter, and this should create an empty table where I can put in my measures. Just make a slight tweak to this. So put a square bracket, space, close square bracket. This just makes it the first table in my data view. So I enter. And it should become the first table now. Yeah, cool. So I'll start making my measures. So I come onto the measures table. You can right click or click on the ellipsis here. So you can right click and choose new measure. So new measure. So the question says, what is the average transaction amount? So I'll just do a measure for the average transaction amount. So I'll call these average underscore amount. And this is equal to the average. So average of the amounts, just type amounts, and it brings up the transactions amount. So I click on tab to just bring it to the view or enter it. So I choose this. So the average of the amounts in the transactions table. So I hit enter. And the question says, show this by location and transaction type. So for this, I'll just use our template here. to guide us in our design. So I'll bring in a clustered bar chart into the view. And this simply, I'll bring in my measure. Just click on it, the average amount. And I'm showing this by location and transaction type. So I'll bring in location as from the location table, right? The states. I'll put down the y-axis, the states on the y-axis. And then next, I'll bring in the transaction type as a legend. So transaction type, click on the legend. Just sort legend, choose descending. Yeah, cool. So I'll just leave this chat for now. Later I'll do the formatting. Just put it somewhere by the side for now. The next chat will build this for the next question. Which ATM location has the highest number of transactions per day? And what time of day do the transactions occur most frequently? So the measure here is the highest number of transactions. So I'll make a measure for that. And then we can now show it by transaction, location, and also the time of the day. So I'll come back here and I'll make a measure. So on my transactions table, every row is a transaction. So I'll just count the number of rows in the transactions table. That should give me the number of transactions. So same drill, come onto the measures table, just new measure. And I'll call this transaction counts. And this simply count rows. Count rows. Yeah. So count rows. And I'm counting the transaction table. So count rows, the transactions table. So I hit enter. Yeah, cool. So for this, I would have an area chart. An area chart. Like the first chart here, an area chart, that's what I'll have. So when I come to the VS pane, this is the area chart. So area chart is what I'll choose. Area chart. So I bring it into the view. And I'll bring in my measure, right? Transaction count. I'll put that there. And I want to show this by, so the question says, which ATM location, right, has the highest number of transactions per day? And what time of day do the transactions occur most frequently? So time of day. So I'll be using the hour table, right? The hour table contains the time of day, the end time, start time, date, hour key, right? So if I put hour key on the x-axis, so you can see the transaction breakdown, right? Based on hour of the day from 12 a.m. to 11:59. But I'll use the start time. The start time. No, it should be on the x-axis. So I'll click on start time and drag it to the x-axis. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so it just shows you the breakdown from 12 a.m. down till 12 p.m. Yeah, 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. rather. And our question says by location, right? By location. which ATM location. So I'll put location as the legend. So I can see this trend by location. So what I'll do is I'll come onto the location table and I'll bring states also to the legend. Legend. So now we can see this by states, right? So I can see, for example, Lagos shows the highest trend. And you can see that it peaks between 3 to 7 p.m., for example. So 3 to 6 p.m. rather. Okay. So I'll just leave it for now. After we'll come and do the formatting. Just put it somewhere here for now. The next question, which age group has the highest number of transactions? So for this report, right, I will have 2 pages. This will be the overview page. Overview page. Overview. Overview. And I have another page for demography. Demography. Yeah. So uh, which age group? So this refers to demography, right? The age group should be on the demography page. So which age group has the highest number of transactions and which transaction type do they usually perform? So highest number of transactions, that's the measure. We already have the measure. We'll just show this by age group and transaction type. So I'll come back to my view demography page. So for this, let's try a stacked column chart for this. Stacked column chart. So I'm also showing the transaction counts. So I bring this into the view. And I'll look at this by age group. So I'll come onto the customers table and bring in the age group to the x-axis. Then, so I think he mentioned the transaction type. Yeah. And which transaction type? Yeah, cool. So this will be the legend. So legend will be transaction type. So I'll just sort the axis by the age group. Yeah. In ascending order. Yeah, 0 to 15, 16, 26, 36 down to, yeah, cool. This is what I want. So this looks good. So alternatively, right, instead of a stack column chart, we could change this to a 100% stack column chart, something like this. So it just shows everything as 100% and shows the share of each of these groups, right? So you can see it's similar across all the groups. So I think the previous one is more insightful. We can see that 25, 26, 35 years have the highest number of transactions, followed by 36, 45 years, etc. So I'll just minimize this and put this somewhere. So let's go on to the next question. And this is asking, what is the trend of transaction volume and transaction amounts over time? Are there any seasonal trends or patterns? So the measures here are transaction volume, that's number of transactions, which we have already, and then transaction amounts. So I'll make a measure for the transaction amount. So I'll come onto the measures table, new measure. And this is simply transaction amounts. This is equal to the sum of the amount column. So before we had average, now it's the sum, total. So amount here, transaction amount. So I click enter here, and then I close the bracket, right? So I'm saying sum up the transactions amount column in the transactions table. So I enter. So this will be on the overview page. And for this, we'll use a line chart. So I'll come onto the V's pane and click on line chart, line chart. And here I'll put in, so you're looking at trend. So this is by date, right? So calendar, and we could use, so let me see, could use, yeah, we use a month name for this. So the month name, right, that will be on the x-axis. And then we'll put the amount on the y-axis. And then we can put the count on the secondary y-axis. But then if you look at the month names, right? Look at the month names. When I zoom in, it's not ordered. You have March, October, May, July, but it's meant to be January down till December. So to fix this, I'll come onto the calendar table. I'll click on the month name column, like this. So month name is the name of the month. Why month is a number of the month, right? So what we'll do is we'll just sort the month name by the month number. So I'll click on month name and I'll come on to the top right where you have this icon, right? Sort one column by another. So I'll click on this drop down and I'm sorting month name by the month number, right? The month. So I'll choose this. And now I'll click on this chart, right? I'll take off month name and then bring it back in again. So it should be updated now. Month name again on the x-axis. So you can see it's now updated, right? It's now January down till December. So this looks good. I'll just minimize this and put it somewhere down here. So go on to the next question. What is the most common transaction type? And how does it vary by location and customer type? So for this, to be here also. So for this, I'll just, what's the most common transaction type? I'll use a do not chat for this. So the common transaction type. So I'll put transaction type, that's type name on the legend. And I'll put the count of transactions, right? The number of transactions on the values. Yeah. So for this, yeah, please show us the transaction types, right? Withdrawals looks most popular, followed by transfers, inquiries, and deposits. And it has to show this by and location and customer type. So for this, I'll just have filters that contain those fields. And then when I filter on this chart, I can see the breakdown of this, right? That's one approach. Or I could use a column chart to just show this also. But then I'll just stick with the filter option. So let's go on to the next question. And this is asking, what is the average transaction amount and transaction frequency per customer by occupation and age group? So I have a measure for the average amount. I'll just make a measure for the transaction frequency. And that's simply um, the frequency of transaction is simply the number of times a person is likely to make a transaction, right? So I'll count, for example, let me take the age group of 0 to 15, for example. I'll count the total transactions for that age group and divide it by the number of people in that age group. So if, for example, I have 1,000 transactions for people who are age 0 to 15, and you have 100 people in that age group, that's simply what 1,000 transactions divided by 100%, and you have a transaction frequency of 10, right? So new measure, and I'll call this transaction frequency. So transaction frequency, and this is equal to transaction count, right? Divided by, okay, I'll use a variable for this. Let me just clear this up. So I'll make a variable and I'll call this variable um, it's not a variable. I'll start with number of customers. So I'll call this number of customers, because I'll still use this number of customers. And this simply a distance counts of the cardholder ID in the transactions table. So number of customers, distance count of the cardholder ID. Yeah, of the cardholder ID in the transactions table. So distance count of transactions cardholder. So I hit enter, close the brackets and enter. So now to get the transaction frequency, I will divide transaction counts by number of customers. All right, so new measure. And transaction frequency. So this divide the transaction counts, comma, by number of customers. So equal to divide, this is numerator, right? Transaction counts. This is denominator, number of customers. So I hit enter. So if I put a card visual, if I put a card visual and show this value, right? Transaction frequency, 243.09. So on average, a person, right, in a year, in 2022, on average, a person used the ATM 243 times, as I was showing you. So this should be a whole number, right? So I'll just come on to click on the measure transaction frequency, and I'll just make this a whole number. Yeah, cool. So I'll just take this off, take it off. So I want to show this, right? The frequency. I want to show this by occupation and age group. So I'll put in a stack bar chart. So I'll put in the transaction frequency on the, that should be on the x-axis or the x-axis. Now bring in the, let me do occupation first. Let me see what it looks like. So occupation. So I put down the x-axis, y-axis. So Italy bills 257 to 229. Okay, this is cool. I'll just do Ctrl C, Ctrl V, duplicate this. And now instead of the occupation, I'll just do it by age group. Let me see what age group looks like. So customers and click on age group. So 260. Okay. So instead of having these two charts, I'll just go with one. So I can see that for the occupation, right? The numbers look quite similar. There's no, there's the range is quite um smaller compared to the age group. And I'm seeing some interesting insights. For example, people who are more than 65 years, they have a higher frequency than those who are 56 to 65 and 46 to 55. So this is more insightful to me. So I'll just go with the frequency by age group. I'll take this off. So this is what I'll use for my analysis. I'll just have this in my report. This looks insightful. And I'll put this somewhere here. So average amount by this, I'll just leave that. I'll stick with this. So I don't have information overload on my report. So I'll go on to the next question. So it says, what percentage of transactions are withdrawals, savings, balance inquiries, and transfers? And how does it vary by location and time of day? So I think we already have this pie chart that shows the share of transaction types, right? Yeah. So it's not asking us how does it vary by location and time of day. So you could filter by location and have a filter for time of day. That should show us the same thing. So instead of having duplicate reports, we just have filters that contain the location and time of day. So the next one is what is the distribution of transaction amounts and transaction frequency? Are there any outliers? So we'll skip that question just to have a simple report. But for this, right, what you have to do is maybe have a histogram. In this case, a bar chart, right, that contains the amounts and frequencies. So that would look something like this. I have a bar chart. So I think for these, um, you want to have the frequency on the y-axis, the count of frequency on the y-axis. Yeah. So let me use a histogram for this. Get more visuals. And I'll come and search for a histogram. Histogram. Um, Let me go with this. Yeah, add. We can add. So I bring this into the view. On the question again, it says transaction amounts and frequency. So for the amount, for example, this is the amount here. I could put it on the x-axis, be on the y-axis also. So it just shows you the distribution, right, of the amount. So I could see that you have, let me zoom in, for example. So I could see that 0 to 20, right, that's a common transaction. Then 20 to 40 is also the second most popular transaction. Then you have 40 to 60, and you have between 100 to 120, right? So this is just showing you the distribution of the transaction amounts, right? But in this case, because of our transactions are quite, the spread is just small from 0 to 120. I'll just keep this. So this I just creates a histogram, right? That shows you the distribution. But for this analysis, I'll just leave it out of the report. So the next one is which ATM locations have the highest and lowest utilization rates, and what factors contribute to this utilization rate? So utilization rate is simply, so this is simply the percentage of time an ATM is being used for transactions compared to the total time the ATM is available for use. So it's simply your total transaction time divided by total available time. multiply by 100%. So in our case, we have a column for duration, right? Of each transaction, we have a duration. So if we sum up the duration column, we'll have the total transaction time in minutes across the year. And then in this case, for the available time, we'll assume that the ATMs are available 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. So with this, we can calculate the total utilization rate for the ATMs. So back to my report, um, I'll make a new measure for this, new measure. And I'll call this um, utilization rate. Um, I'll make a variable for the transaction time. And this is simply equal to sum of the duration column. I'll make one more variable for the available time. So we're assuming that the ATMs are available 24 hours a day and 365 days in the year. So this is simply 24 hours in a day multiplied by 365 days. So 24 hours a day, 365 days in a year, and number of minutes in a day, in an hour rather, 60 minutes in an hour. So 24 hours in a day, 365 days in a year, and 60 minutes in an hour, right? And multiply this by the number of ATMs. So you have a column for number of ATMs. ATM, I think. So that's in the location table. Okay, sum of ATM. Yeah, number of ATMs, yeah. So you're saying for each ATM, right? Multiply the number of minutes in an hour, hours in a day, and days in a year, right? It will give us the total available time for each ATM. So once we have the transaction time and available time, to get the utilization rate, right? Utilization rate. Sorry, it should be a variable also. Variable utilization rate. This is simply dividing, so divide the transaction time by the available time. And then finally, right, we'll return the utilization rate. Cool. So I'll zoom in, right? So we are calculating the time for total transactions, right? Available time, and then the rate is dividing the transaction time by available time. And finally, we return the utilization rate. Once I have this, I can enter. So I come on to this overview page. So I can put in a card visual to just see what it's showing me to be sure that it looks feasible. Utilization rate 0.13. So this should be a percentage. So I'll click on the utilization rate, click on the column, on the measure rather, and click percentage here. But this I want a decimal place. So it means the ATMs are utilized 12.9% of the time. That's the utilization rate for the ATMs, 12.9%. So this looks great. So the question is to show this by location, right? So for this, I would use, I want to remove this. For this, I will use a map. So I'm using the Azure map, right? The Azure map, the Azure map. So I'll click on the Azure map. And if you don't have the Azure map, I'll put a link in the description to show how to activate it. This is the Azure map, right? Click on this. And my location, my location will be the states, right? Put on our locations, the states. And then my size, my size would be the utilization rate. So I'll bring down, put down the size. And then you can format the map, right? So I'll come onto the brush icon, map settings, the style, I would use grayscale dark as well as use. And you can make other changes, right? I won't do too much. I'll just do a few changes. Um, so bubble layer, yeah, this looks good. Category labels, I'll put this on. So I can see the states, right? They're highlighted. And let me see. So bubble the category labels. So background. Let me see this is for no background off. And then let me see heat map, no 3D column layer. So for this, right, it just shows you the 3D dimension, right? So you can see it just shows you the heights. Oh, I don't need this, I'll just take it off. I think these all look good, right? We just um, map setting style, view, photos and all, controls, word wrap, navigation, put it off, style picker, put it off. Yeah, I think this looks okay. So this is my map, right? Yeah, let's just confirm something. Okay, so I think I have some all those other fields by that are there. I need to take them off. The property, map settings, style, create back, show labels off. Yeah, cool. That's what I want. Show labels off. Yeah, cool. This looks great. So on to the next question. So it says, what is the average transaction time by location, transaction type, and time of day? And how does it vary by customer type and occupation? Right, location type. So average transaction time. So I need to make a measure for that. That's the average duration. So I'll come on to new measure. And I'll call this average duration. This is simply an average of the duration column. So average of the duration column, right? So I hit enter. Is I would have um, I would have I'll have if I have 100%. Okay, so I have a stacked bar chart, and the average duration should be on the x-axis. And then the question says by location, transaction type, time of day. So we could look at this by location. Let's see what it looks like. I have states on the y-axis, and then we can have transaction type on the legend. I come on to transaction type on the legend. So it says time of day. We just have that like a slicer, right? Location, so time of day could be a slicer. We just and then the type of customers and occupation. So that'll be slicers. That'll help us filter this. So there are also some insightful charts we could add to what we have currently, right? So I want to add a decomposition tree. So this chart here, right, decomposition tree. I want to add this. This can help us slice your data into different um, dimensions, right? So for this, I want to show um, transaction percentage, right? The breakdown of the transaction breakdown. Or I could use the count of transactions actually. Let's use this. Analyze the count of transactions. So I just call this transaction count. So you can look at this by, I'll just use this as a guide. So you can look at this by transaction type, type of customer, occupation, etc. So for this question, right, I think we can also use this the conversation tree to actually break it down. Yeah, the percentage of transactions. So instead of the count of transactions, let me do percentage of transactions. So I'll make a new measure for the new measure. And I'll call this percentage transactions. What is it called? So I'll simply divide transaction counts by, and just calculate transaction counts. And I'll have all selected. Stable. View what this looks like. I'm adding this card visual. I don't know, I made a mistake. And you know, let me just change this. So instead of the counts, I'll put in my new measure, percentage transactions. So show me one. I want to make it as percentage. So I'll click on this and make it a percentage. Yeah, for one decimal place, 100.0. Yeah, cool. So we can look at this now by transaction type. So the breakdown. So I'll put this, so explained by, I'll add transaction type. And it brings in this plus icon. When I click on this now, so high value, low value, right? Or transaction type name. So it breaks down the percentage, right, by transaction type. And you can add more layers to these, right? So I could also add another layer. So I could say customer is Wisabi, for example, right? I'll put that under the transaction type. And you can look at this, right, by those that are Wisabi customers and non Wisabi customers. So if that breaks the withdrawals down, right, by Wisabi and non Wisabi. And you can also add more fields, right? You could add occupation, for example. For example, right? Add it here. And this further breaks them down, right? So click on this occupation. You can see the further breakdown by occupation, right? So students, and when you scroll down, you see other examples, right? So you get to the end. Cool. Um, and you could add more fields if you want to, right? So I'll just leave it at this for now. Then I want to make a scatter plot, right? So this will just help me look at the average amount versus average duration and how it's spread across locations and transaction type. So I'll come back to my Power BI chart and I'll bring in a scatter chart, right? This scatter chart. So I'll bring it to the view. And here I'm looking at um, average duration measures, average duration. That will be on the x-axis, and average amount. That will be on the y-axis. All right, cool. So we can look at this by by location, right? By states. So I'll put this on the values. Right. So you have the 5 different states. And for the legend, we could have transaction type as a legend or age group. Let me see what I use here. Okay, transaction type as a legend. Yeah. So I'll put this in the legend. And then next, for the sizes, for the sizes, the size, we could use the transaction count or the average amount, or let me see what I used for the sizes. Okay, I think I used the transaction frequency. Let me just check and see what it looks like when I put that in for the size and frequency. That's not what I used. Let me try the transaction count. Number of customers. I think this looks cool. Let me just try this one and then see what it looks like. You know what, I'll use the number of customers. I think that makes sense. Number of customers for each of these transaction types. Yeah. And then I'll add a time field, right? The play axis. So calendar, I'll bring in the end of week on the play axis. Yeah, I forgot something, right? So best practice is best to always mark your calendar table as a date table. So I click on this and I'll choose mark as date table, mark as date table. Select column, my date column, yeah. Hit OK. Yeah, cool. So now I can see how these fields are changing over time, right? When I click on this play icon, for example, so you can see how these things are changing over time. So you know what? I'll just make a change. So I'll have um, location as a legend rather, and type as the values. So I'll bring location to the legend, state to legend, and then I'll have the transaction type as the values. Yeah, cool. So when I play these, they're showing you the change weekly, right? So when I stop this, for example, so this is the average duration, this is the average amount. So I can see that, for example, Kano. So this withdrawals in Kano, right? Withdrawals in Kano. So this has the highest amount, from what I can see. The highest, and on average, right? It takes the longest. And then you also have um, deposits in Kano also. Takes 5.52. Then deposits in Lagos. And these the FCT, deposits in the FCT. It takes quite long also. Okay, I think I'm getting it mixed up actually. So it was the the previous arrangement was correct, right? We'll have the values as location, but then we'll have transaction type on the legend. Yeah, legend. That's correct. So for us to see the states, I need to put on the category on. So I'll come on here and put the category label on. You can now see the states here. This is what I was missing. Yeah, cool. So like before, right, we could see that withdrawals in Kano takes the longest, right? And then you have deposits in these locations, Kano, FCT, Kano, Lagos. They all take time. And then the highest amount, right, is on average withdrawals in Lagos. You also have, so it's quite similar, right? Withdrawals in Kano, withdrawals in Rivers, etc. They're all similar. But then the shortest transactions, right, are inquiries, and this makes sense. Inquiries in Rivers States, Enugu, and Kano is quite um, a state that we need to look into because you see that the duration in inquiries is about 3 minutes. In other states, is about 2.5, 2.4 minutes. So there's quite a gap there. But then this is quite insightful, right? And you can see the change over time also. See how it changes over time. So this is cool. So just a few charts before we can design this. So I'll need to just put high level card visuals, right? That shows some important metrics. So I come onto the overview tab, and here I'll just bring in. So this charts, I'll bring it to the overview page. This charts, Control X, just cut it and paste it here. All right, paste it here. Okay. Add card visuals, visualization. and visuals. So I'll put a card for total transactions. I'll just put this by the side. I'll still design them in a bit. So here I'll have a card for total transactions amount measures. So amounts, I'll put it here. And I'll just duplicate this, Control C, Control V. And I'll put one more card for, so I take this off, a number of transactions, Control C, Control V. So I'll make one more card for number of customers. And I'll make one more card for the utilization rate. I duplicate this Control C, Control V, and I'll just put in the customer count here. So I'll check this. I'm bringing custom number of customers here. Yes, cool. And then one last thing is to bring in the company. So I insert an image. So I come on here and I choose this option, add an image to report. And I'll come on to my project folder, the pictures folder, right? So I have the logo, start the logo, open. The style, I'll just make it fit, and then make it smaller. You can make it feel. Let me see how it looks like. Feel. Yeah, make it smaller. Now just copy this, Control C, and I'll paste that here also. Yeah, cool. So, just so we save time, I want to use the page size I use. So when I come here, I want to use the page size I use, canvas settings. So it's 960 by 1550. So I'll come on here to this overview page, and I'll use a custom, right? And this 950. I think it was 960, right? 960 by 1550. Yeah, 950, 960 by 1550. Yeah, cool. So like this. And for this other page, you have 950 by 1450. So just click on a blank canvas, right? Come onto this brush icon and then canvas settings. So custom, and this 950 by 1450. So I can close this. Yeah. So this the conversation tree should be on the so I'll Control X, cut it and paste it here, and then we'll get it. It should be here on this page, not overview page. So I'll just try to make this charts fit, right? So I'll start with I'll start with this. So it's best practice to always have a sketch of what your report should look like before you start designing. So I already have mine, right, which is this slide here. This will just guide me on what I'm trying to do. So I have the area chart first somewhere here. And then I have my card visuals uh, somewhere here. This is here, this is somewhere here. And mm, so I think I use utilization rate. Last one, yeah. Put this somewhere for now. So I have my area charts. page. Click on these at eight interactions. So I like to have filter interactions. So filter, filter, filter. Same thing here too. Filter, 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 filter. Same thing here too. Filter, 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 filter. Same thing here too. Filter, 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 filter. And lastly, filter, 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 filter. Same drill here too. Click on this. Filter, 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 filter. This filter too. Filter too. Click on this also. Should be filter. Okay. Click on this. Okay. Filter. Okay. Filter. Yeah, click on this filter. Yeah. So I'll make a new page. This is my home page. Home page. So, so I'll add in a background to my home page. Master reports, canvas background. Click on the browse option and I'll choose this my prayers in your prayers folder, right? In the pictures folder, you see what's the home background option. Just choose that option. And transparency is 100, so you can't see the background. So I'll make it 0. Make it 0. And then image fit, I'll choose what fits. I can see, right? It now shows you the fit like this. So for the chart I'll put in here, right? I'll come on to the V-spline, right? I'll come on to this ellipses here, get more visuals. So I'll click on this, get more visuals. I'll search for the scroller. Scroller. That's this, right? Scroller. So I choose this and add it, right? So it's added. I'll just click on OK. Choose the scroller charts. Bring it to the bottom here. Just drag it down. Yeah. And drag it across the bottom. So here, this is just show me I think what I used for this was the number of transactions. But you could use anything you want, right? So in this case, I'll just use the utilization rate. So I come on here, category, that will be the ATM locations, right? So location name will be a category. And then for the values that will show, absolute values, you just show the acceleration rate. Yeah, let's try that. So anything you want, like you could use the rates, you could use the frequency, you could use the amount or number of transactions, right? Whatever you want to use, just a high level overview, just scrolls over and shows you. So I'll stick with the rates. And I'll just format this to make it look better. Scroller and so the title should be off, and then the background should be black. And then I think one more thing, put this on. Yeah, that's all. So I'll take come back to the home page. For the overview page, right? We'll add background also. So blank canvas, right? Come on to the icon, canvas background, browse. And here I'll choose the overview background, right? .svg file, pictures folder, right? Overview background, choose this. And make transparency to be 0 also. And then we'll fit. So here what we'll do, we'll just drag the images to just fit the background, right? So I think I'll put this logo at the right hand side here. And then I'll just drag this and make it fit into this chart here. I'm on here, same drill. So background, canvas background, browse, and here I'll choose demographic background. I'll make the transparency there and fit. Let's do some formatting. Click on this background. So click on the chart, right? Then brush icon background, general. So effects, put the background off, right? And then y-axis, click on this, make the color to be white, right? And the title, I'll put it off. Okay, if I do this right, if I do this, I'll just stick with, let's edit our theme. If I do this, we'll come to this in a bit. So view, so you come to my I already have a palette I'm working with, right? And I'll share this, I'll put the link to this palette on the description of the video. So if you want to use this, right, you could do this, or you could create your own palette. Just come to this website, coolors.com. You can create your own palette here. So I'll copy this color, copy this. I'll come onto Power BI, the View tab, click on Themes dropdown. So I'll choose the classic theme. That's what I'm working with, classic theme. And view themes, right? I will customize this classic theme. So customize current theme. I'll just add my palettes to the existing colors that are here, right? So colors. So I'll just change this one. I'll put this color I copied from my palette. Put it here. Apply. And then I'll copy this also. That color, so I'll replace color 2 with this color I have here. And then let's see, slate gray. Copy this also. I'll replace this gray with the gray I copied. And then let me see the next one. Lavender. So I copy this. save this color and use my having. So I think I'll just leave that green. I have this green color here. I'll work with this one. So that's the colors, right? So the text, right? So I just apply this, apply. So so this by default, he has made the backgrounds transparent, right? So I can do I come on here, I'll do some editing. So I'll make the y-axis, you have done that white. So I'll make this also x-axis, the values, I'll make the color to be white also. But in this case, I don't want the x-axis. So I'll just put the x-axis off, put it up. So grid lines, scroll down, with this off already. Then the data labels, we'll make this white also. So values, and I'll make this white. I can make it bigger. I'll make the font to be Sego UI. So the title, just have a question. What is the transaction frequency by age group? And I'll have Sego UI bold. Make it 13. Make it white. What's this chat? For the values, I'll make it be white. And the labels also make it be white. Make it a bit bigger. Put the background or the header. I'll make it this one is different. No, it's in darker. So that one type. What's the next chart? And same drill. So let me use the same format. Let me see if it works. So copy this format and paste it here. So just legend text, make it white, and position bottom left. Black color. No, no. For the little labels, use a black color. Values. Let's make it 1,000. Make it bigger. The title. Yeah, so have our report looking um, better. For this, I could just change the color of the line to lines. So creating navigations for this page, I'll bring in blank buttons. So a blank button, I'll put that here. Control C, Control V. Oh, you know what? And just okay. Just button uh, style. So I'll put the text on and I'll type in the home to make it bold, make it white, create the font size, and then I scroll down. Just turn the border off. Yeah, this is the home. When you're at the home, you see that, and then this would be the overview page. So style, put the text on, and I'll call this overview. I'll make this white. So increase the font size also. So we'll put the border off. So this is the states, right? States, default states. So by default, it will look like this, right? But when you hover over it, right, what should happen? So I want to see a color change. So I'll put the fill on. And okay, so back to the default state, right? There's a color, but I'll just make the transparency to be 100%. So it'll be transparent. It'll be transparent, right? By default. But then when you hover over it, so hover over it, right? The color should change. So maybe a green color. And also the text should become um bold and maybe increase in size a bit, something like this. Color is not changing. Okay, transparency should be 50%. So when you hover over it, right, transparency should decrease and color should change. Yeah, like this, yeah, cool. Right, cool, like this. So I'll duplicate these also, Control C, Control V. For this one now, I'll change the text. This should say demography, the third page, right? Demography. Cool. So the action, right? We just assign actions to this button. So I'll click on this. I'll put the action on. When I come here, I'll choose page navigation and I'll choose destination overview page, right? And then I'll also add a tooltip text that says go to overview page. Yeah, so no button style. So by default, this for the demographic by default, it should say demography also. Forgot to update this. Yeah. So when you hold control and click on this, right, go to the overview page. That's perfect. So same thing here too. We'll just make Just make this wider so it covers the entire width of this. So for this action, put it on the same drill. I'll put on the page navigation, but this time now I should go to the demography page. And for the tooltip, right, we'll say go to demography page and enter. So now when I control and click on this, right, I go to the demography page. That's awesome. So one last thing we'll do is just to configure this navigation. So I'll just do for one page, right? But the same thing applies to the other pages also. The same thing, you can do it for this icons also. But because of time, I'll just do it for this one page. So I'll insert like before, right? Blank buttons also. Blank buttons. So I'll put this here on the home page, on the home icon rather. So this will navigate to the home page, right? When you hover right and click on it, you go to the home page. That's what this button will do. So I'll put on this style, right? By default, the color will be blank. So I'll put the fill on, but I'll set transparency to 100%. By default, right? It'll be blank like this, be blank. But then when you hover over it, right, the color will change. Color will change. So if you just use the same green color as before, but make the transparency be 50%, right? So color changes, right, a bit. Yeah, that's cool. And then one thing I'll do is style. I'll put the border off, and then we'll set the action, right? We'll set it to page navigation, and this will take you to the home page, right? The home page. And then we'll do another one also. Control C, Control V. So I'll just copy and put this here. But this time, right, it should take us to the demography page rather, right? So let's test it and see what happens. When I click on this, control, click on this, right? I go to the home page. And when I control click on this, right, I go to the demography page. Yeah, cool. So I could just overview page. You just hold shift, rather shift and click on this. So control C. I'll just paste this here also. Right, since it's similar functions, this for the navigation. Yeah. This is the same thing, right? Home page. But this one now, this time it will take us to the overview page. So the action now, instead of destination, we'll choose overview page, right? Overview page here. So when I click on this, I go to the overview page. That's cool. So one last thing we'll do is for the filters, right? So I also add a button here, right? But this will have a different function. So for this, well, these I'll insert a shape. A shape. on this sheet, I'll just have just a demo, right? I'll just have a few slicers. So click out of this. So I want to bring in slicers. So choose slicer, right? And I'll just put two slicers, right, for the demo, but you can have as many as you want. So I'll just put in two slicers. And for this, I'll have let me just have the calendar, the month name, and I'll just do some quick settings. So I'll choose a drop down style and slider header. I'll put that on, but the font color will be white. And select month, and then the values also. Maybe will be bigger. Font to be white. So when I click on this drop down right, make it black rather. Values, make it black. Yeah. Or alternatively, you can make this white and make the background black. Make the background black. Yeah, this works also. Make the header a bit larger, it's just small. Yeah, cool. So I'll just add one more slider because of time, Ctrl+C, and I'll put this down here too. And I'll just use transaction type maybe. Take this off first, yeah. And transaction type. So just do one change. So the um, header, right? It should be select transaction type. Yeah, choose your type here, right here. Cool. And I'll add that button. So you have this that says clear all sliders. I'll put it here, right? Default rather be white. Yes. And then when you hover right, transparency should be 50%. But the text color should change to something dark and increase in size. Become bold. Yeah, cool. So for the border, one more thing for the border, just make it white. The fonts, then border, make it white, color white, and hover. Oh, I think that. Yeah, cool. And then one last thing, I insert another button. So this is simply reset button. So this is just to hide the slicer. Icon, I'll just make it white also. Yeah, cool. So at this point, we'll add what's called bookmarks. So I come to the View tab. I choose Selection pane. So I'll hide the Vis pane, hide this, hide data pane, Selection pane, and then Bookmarks pane also. So bookmarks is like it helps capture the view, right, the state of your report, and you can use that to create interactions between your visuals. So um I'll group all this together, right? So I have this slicer. I would hold control, click on this, click on the two slides that I have. No, I missed this. So hold control, click on all the elements in your slicer group. So the months, the type slicer, clear slicer, this, and do it one last time. So hold control, click on this, click on this, click on this, click on this, and then on the shape itself, yeah. So I'll right click and I'll choose group. I'll create a group and I'll call this slicer group. So now I can control all these elements of the group. So when I come here on this pane, if I click on this hide icon, right, it hides everything, right? So this is helpful for me. So what I'll do is I will add a bookmark, right, to save the current states. There's something, there's no, so it looks like this button, uh, this button was not part of the group. So I need to move it into the group. Oh, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, cool. So I'll hide this group, right? And I'll add, oh, you know what? Let me show the group. So what I'll do is I'll add a bookmark to save the state of the report. So I click on bookmarks add, and I'll call this um show slicer Now come on to this ellipsis. I will check this data option. So that way it does not retain filter information and confuse me when I'm trying to interpret my report. So show slicer. And then I'll hide this, right? I'll hide the slicer and add a bookmark. This time I'll call this hide slicer. So when I click on show slicer, right, it shows the slicer and this hides the slicer, right? The same will also I want check data option. So now when I show my slicer, right, so this icon here, right, this icon here, this back arrow here, this will hide the slicer. So I'll click on this, click onto this highlighted, right? This back arrow is highlighted. Right, when I click on this, I'll come on to this format tab, right? Format tab, and put the action on for that icon. And the action will be a bookmark, right? And this what hide my slicer, right? So now when I come on to this icon, hold control. And you know what? Let me also add a text that explains what it's doing. So formats, right? Action, and then tooltip says what? Hide slicer or hide filters. Yeah, cool. So when I hold control, right? Hold control and click on this, right? It hides the sliders, which is awesome. And to show my sliders, right, I'll click on this button for the sliders and click on the format tab, put the action on, right? But this time I'll change it to what's bookmark. And this time it would help me show the sliders. And I'll say what my tooltip will be show sliders, right? So now when I click on this bookmark, right, control click on it. So control click, right, shows my sliders. And when I click on this also, it hides my sliders, right? And I can come on here, right? Let's say I come on here, I choose a month, for example, February, for example. And then I come on here and choose a transaction type, for example. Hide my sliders, right? So it has filtered for what I chose. When I come back here and show my sliders, if I click on this clear all sliders, right, it resets the report to the default state. So hold control and click on this, right? It has cleared all the sliders and reset the report. So the same thing, right? You can just add the same step, just follow it also for the demography page and add a slicer to this icon, right? The interactivity there, that should work also. So you have your report, right? It looks good to go. So next thing I'll do is to publish this to the Power BI service, right? So this is my Power BI service. This is Power BI service, right? And you can come on here, create a workspace, right? A new workspace, for example. And I'll just call this Wisabi Bank, for example, right? And you can say what's workspace for Wisabi ATM reporting. ATM transaction reporting. You can add an image for your workspace, save the workspace, right? So I want to publish my report to this workspace, and you can add um, people to the workspace, right? So maybe stakeholders that will view the reports. You add all of them to this workspace, right? And then you come on to your Power BI reports. So first thing I will save this report. So I'll save the report, and I'll call this Wisabi ATM report. And I'll save this. So I come to the home tab. I come to the home tab, and top right, you see publish. So I click on the publish option. So I'm already signed into my Power BI account, right? And I can publish my Power BI workspace. So I will include a link on the description to show you how to create a Power BI work email and set up a workspace. So Wisabi Bank, I'll choose this workspace, right? Whatever Wisabi Bank, and I'll click on select, and it publishes the report to the Power BI service. So it's successful, right? So I'll go on to my workspace, and you can see the reports here, right? When I click on the ATM reports, it opens up the reports, right? And you can interact with the reports. So everyone you add to the workspace, right? They can be able to access the reports based on the access privilege given to them. They can interact with the report, right? On the Power BI service. So these are reports, right? Fully interactive. So you can use this to interact, or you can use your built-in bookmarks to interact with the reports. So after this, right, the next step, right, in your analysis is to create reports to just send to stakeholders, right? So I've included a sample Power BI PowerPoint um, presentation in the folder, right? So you could use that as a guide. So this is what it looks like, right? So you have um, the different charts that you created, right? And the insights from the charts. So these are high-level overview of numbers, right? Amounts processed, transactions, etc. The utilization rates, right? So you have the charts and your insights from the charts, right? Same thing here too. Chart and insights, just like that. So this is what you can send to a bank, a branch manager, right? Or send to an ATM operations manager, for example, this report. And I included also the Power BI report that's interactive, right? This PowerPoint slide, which is this, right? So you can embed the Power BI reports on the PowerPoint slide. So they can look at the reports and also interact with reports on the same PowerPoint slide. So we're able to answer the business questions, right, and create a report. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.